Hello and welcome to another episode of Highett-Smith Live webinars. Today, we're talking about the importance of alignment. So, have you ever felt that you've been misaligned with your colleagues and the wider leadership team? I know I have. I'll give you an example. Last year, I was going through a hiring process for a senior commercial leader. And as we got into the process, there was one stakeholder leading from the front, but they were also fairly new into the business and they hadn't done the background work. So as they went through speaking to individuals that they felt were a good fit, were excited about. They brought in one of the other members of the leadership team at quite a late stage in the process and just torpedoed the entire panel of individuals that they were talking to. And it was really down to alignment. The other stakeholder had very different perspectives on what they were looking for in this individual. Having been with the business for a long time, that carried weight as well. So what ended up happening? We went back to the beginning of the process, went back to square one, lost that time. It started an internal blame game within the organization. Whose fault was it? What happened? And I mean, I always try and take a lot of responsibility on my own shoulders in these scenarios because essentially it is, it's a big part of our role as recruiters to guide and lead that process for organization. This is what we do day in, day out, rather than hiring managers who might do it a couple of times a year or maybe even less in the current environment. So really making sure there is alignment is, for me, one of the most critical things in any hiring process. We're in a world that is evolving and changing at such a rapid pace that it's not about bums on seats as it maybe was 10 years ago. It's not about growth at all costs. Businesses are looking for greater talent density. And that means smaller, leaner teams with higher performance, better output, often augmented by things like AI, which means that this topic of alignment is even more important. So historically, recruiting used to be about your black book, your database essentially, but actually the advent of the internet and visibility has made people much easier to find. And the way that we look at successful hiring is through this triad of alignment, attraction, and assessment. And today we're really talking about the first element of that, alignment. So what is alignment and how do we do it? So we want to look at essentially the end goal. If you want to start with the end in mind, is to have some sort of scorecard that your hiring committee, your hiring team, your leadership team, all the relevant stakeholders are very much aligned and on board with what we're looking at. So you want to look at your vision, mission, values as an organization and for the individual role. I think it's even more interesting these days to go out and canvass opinions. Organizations being leaner and less siloed means that collaboration, cross-functionality are more important skills to have, and also it's more, it's essential for businesses to have this much more coordinated and aligned approach when doing things. So you want to look at, where does a particular role or team touch other areas of the organization? Go out and canvas those opinions, those perspectives, because what you'll find is that individuals come from different backgrounds. We're an amalgamation of identities, of experiences that bring us to our own personal real world view. And that can be super insightful and feed into building that alignment between your leadership team. A side benefit of that is also it makes people feel empowered to have an opinion, and also they feel valued, that they're actually part of that overall strategy as well. So if you're a CEO, founder, co-founder, it's a great way to bring everybody along on the journey. So I like to do this on an individual basis with each of those stakeholders, because if you do it in a group setting, what you tend to have is tribe mentality. So tribe mentality is that peer instinct, hero instinct, and that ancient instinct. So peers will generally start to agree with each other because someone else is saying it, or they'll be fighting for their own agenda or status, or they'll have probably one of the most dangerous concepts in the world of we've always done it this way. So by avoiding that group thing, avoiding that highest paid person's opinion, you're going to get individual insights. You're going to create a safe space where people will be able to share their own genuine, authentic, and unique perspective. You'll be able to, understand what their context is, and how it impacts the wider overall organization and feeds into this one particular hire. That you can clarify, the vision, the mission, the values. We'll use this to understand, the purpose of the role. Where do we have gaps in the organization? Where is there air cover for particular skills and experiences or perspectives in the business? You want to look up and down and across in your organization to make sure that kind of 360 feedback type of process, so that you're building data points internally to understand it. Now, what you'll find in this process is there'll be both commonalities and differences or discrepancies in what people want. So then the goal is to really help to define, well, okay, set your standard. What are the commonalities? And then look at the discrepancies and why are they there? And maybe it's an approach where when you go to market, you want to tap into these different types of skill sets and these discrepancies and see what real people's experiences bring to the table before making that decision. This will help to feed into, as I say, that scorecard. The other elements of the scorecard are your objectives. What does good look like in 6, 12, 24 months' time? What are the skills and experiences that this person should be bringing to the table? You've got to think, particularly when we're talking about hiring leaders, you're building a brain trust. You're building the intellectual capacity to deal with the challenges that you've not even seen yet, you've not foreseen, whether that's external market factors that you can't control, whether it's competition, whether it's customers challenges or technology challenge. No one can predict the future. We're all making our best guess based on the data available, and having the right mental capacity and agility and skill set can be the difference between a successful business and a business that doesn't see things until too late. So bringing in different stakeholders, different perspectives, getting alignment and agreement is, for me, it's the minimum starting point. I'll give you an example. We've been going through a process some time ago now to build an advisory board for an organization. And I went out and interviewed investors, CEO, the senior leadership team, and some of the team to understand those different perspectives around the organization. And there are what I call primary benefits and secondary benefits. So your primary benefits or primary purpose is to help to build a clear and aligned picture and scorecard of what you're looking for when going to market to hire someone new. The secondary benefits can be a multitude of different things. Well, whether it's helping to identify gaps in the organization, making sure we're very clear on whether who's deciding, who's delegating, who's designing systems within the organization, getting ideas from different parts of the business, new and old, and different experiences that have shaped their perspectives. All of this kind of really brings it into, as I say, the primary purpose, which is getting the right people so that you have the highest talent density, the greatest business and mental capacity to drive the business forward, but also understanding, well, how have other organizations done it, and maybe how have organizations in similar but associated industries done it, and how do our end customers do it and use it. And that's the beauty of a search process. It's not just about a bum on a seat. It's an opportunity to see how the business can progress and move forward. There's an awful lot of organizations out there that have been stuck. Again, another example, we worked with a business that had changed investors a number of years ago, and times were great. Didn't need to think about it. Order book was crazy, but they lacked the understanding of the market, the how customers were using their particular product, so that when there was external factors which they had no control over, people were essentially guessing as to what was the right next step. And it became apparent because actually the business declined and became distressed. So using this as that opportunity to realign the business, and it can be also a case of validating a value creation plan. Not necessarily people that are, well, maybe it's going to be people that are going to feed into that or build their own value creation plan. but how does the overall business VCP look like? And how is that going to be driving forward? And can we use this as an opportunity to, as a secondary benefit, to help validate some of that? Validate product decisions, product roadmap, commercial go-to-market strategies. There are so many benefits and opportunities to having this process. And it starts with alignment. So it might sound like there's an awful lot of work to go through up front, but it's the primary thing that any business should do, particularly if you want leaner and meaner teams that have higher potential, higher output. I always encourage people to challenge the status quo. What has been done historically? Why did that work? What could be done differently? Let's get some blue sky thinking out there. What can we learn from different industries that maybe there are opportunities to see something fundamentally different? Is it a pivot point in the organization? And these are things that can help foster innovation. Perhaps the organization, I see this all the time. When you're in those four walls, it's very difficult to see the wood for the trees. And driving the business forward, you're head down, you're focused on what you're doing, you're experimenting within that bubble. And this is such a fantastic opportunity to be able to look outside and see things differently, to gather and garner different perspectives so that they feed into those data points and that information that you have to make sure that you're making the best possible decisions. I mean, one note I'll also have is every one of us is full of biases. They're formed by our experiences, what we've done, what's worked, what hasn't done, what hasn't worked. And if we rely on one individual to drive something, we're going to be beholden to their biases as well, conscious or unconscious. And inevitably, particularly with senior leadership, we get to a stage where our success becomes a little bit of a self-validating prophecy, and we become very fixed in our way or the highway. Now, that's a dangerous place to be. One of my favorite books around, what got you here won't get you there. We can fall into the trap of, well, this is what worked. But by striving, by being curious, by trying to learn and use that to inform our decisions, we'll naturally make our decisions better. So in the modern world, when we are wanting to be leaner, be more productive, more profitable with the same amount of people, or do more with less even, we want to make sure that when we are going to market, we're truly aligned in why we're doing it, what's our purpose, what's the vision, mission, and values. It can also be a great reminder. I found another client that actually they didn't have a vision, mission, and values for the organization. It had been done as a strategic project, by a consultancy a number of years ago, but wasn't really there. So maybe it's an opportune time to refresh that. As things evolve and change constantly, we always need to pause, reflect, and review to see if we're on the right path and making sure we're moving forward, because budgets can be less. You want to make the right moves. You want to feel confident in what you're doing, putting your best foot forward. not be rushing things to, and having to fix them later. We want to experiment, explore, be curious, but almost less haste, more speed is the final thought that I want to leave you with. So if you want to talk about any of the topics that we covered today, you can reach out to me, DM me. We've got some resources around alignment that you can utilize, free resources that you can utilize and help to augment and change your organization for the better. Also want to point out our podcast is live. Check it out and follow us on LinkedIn and other platforms. But thank you so much for your attention today. Always a pleasure. We'll be back soon with another webinar. Looking forward to it.